Super Bowl Licks is set. Super Bowl 59. It'll be the Chiefs and the Eagles, the rematch. And we welcome you to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. I just realized something. I think the camaraderie that we have on this show is really important to me. You know, after the game yesterday, I just had a really nasty, sour taste in my mouth from that game, and I was just in a bad mood. I really hate this upcoming Super Bowl. I just hate it. But seeing you guys, chatting with you guys before this show, put me in a better mood. It's nice to have friends, I guess. But I went from really liking the Chiefs. I hate the Chiefs now. I might root for the Eagles. That's where I am. I might root for the Eagles. And I said to my wife, rooting for the Eagles is like drinking poison, and I might drink poison in 2 weeks. So that's my headspace right now. That's where I am. Sorry.
Why do you hate the Chiefs? Just because they win?
No, everything changed with the ruling on the field stance. Like as soon as they upheld that ruling, I just started hating them. I can't take it anymore. It was such a first down, and it just was a first down, and they get all the calls. I can't take it.
So your team refs.
It's not a conspiracy. It's not a higher up thing. It just keeps happening. I don't believe the game is fixed, but I'm getting tired of it. And now I think the Eagles are going to win, because I think the Eagles are going to get the calls now. I feel like it's going to go against the Chiefs now because there's going to be so much scrutiny to a level never before. But I also think the Eagles are better. So my initial pick is the Eagles, and I still don't know who I'm rooting for. Heath, how are you doing? Congratulations.
I want to just start with, I hope that now we can give Jalen Hurts a little bit of credit.
Oh, don't start.
Like this guy, 46-20 as a starter in the NFL. 46-20, headed to his second Super Bowl at 26 years old. Leads the NFL in rushing touchdowns over the last 4 years, and tied for fourth in yards per pass attempt over that same stretch. In his last 17 playoff games, he has 16 touchdowns and 1 turnover.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts is remarkable, was fantastic. 55 points in a conference championship game. Wow.
And he was the highest scoring quarterback of the week, 34 fantasy points. Everyone was good. Daniels, 26. Hurts 34, Allen 24, Mahomes 31. Mahomes only 26 pass attempts, and he ran 2 touchdowns in. So it was a high-scoring week. That's not what we wanted to hear from Heath. I see this tweet from Heath. He's like, so upset for James Cook. He was so great. Like, get the hell out of here.
James Cook was the best player. Like, that game might be a blowout if James Cook isn't on the team. 99% of the running backs in the NFL do not score a touchdown on that 4th and goal at the one that he turned into a touchdown, and he averaged like 8.7 yards per touch. Like, he was awesome. And I'm a big James Cook guy.
If you think about the last 2 AFC Championship games, that's almost the same play where Zay Flowers fumbles.
Wow. Yeah. Well, it wasn't like
the dive into the end zone.
Oh, a dive into the end zone. Yeah, I mean, very different play, but yeah, the end was right.
What do you want to hear from me, Adam?
Just be an obnoxious Chiefs fan. Like, just be it. You're always an obnoxious Chiefs fan. Don't stop now.
I just the only thing I don't understand is I hate the Chiefs now because I think when they went to the official review in New York, they got it wrong. And so now I hate the Chiefs.
It doesn't make
the other thing I don't understand is, there's 13 minutes left in the game, and they got a 4th and 1 call wrong at the 40-yard line. And what we've seen for the last half of decade and what we saw in this game certainly tells us that would have made all the difference. And there's no way the Chiefs could have ever recovered from them getting that 4th and 1 at midfield. There's no way the Chiefs win the game if they just got the 4th and 1.
No, of course.
I don't think that's the worst call, to be honest with you. I think it's the ball that hits the ground on the where they,
that was the best thing that could have happened to the Bills. If that'd been called incomplete, the Chiefs would have accepted the holding penalty that they called on DeMar Hamlin. They would have had 1st and 10 at the 25. Buffalo wouldn't have got the ball back at the end of the half.
Yeah, no, obviously they could have won, and I don't know. It doesn't make any sense for this to be the thing that puts me over the edge. But I just and I think my heart breaks for the Bills too. I think that's the other part of it. Again, I'm not a Chiefs hater. I got nothing against the Chiefs.
That's not how you started.
Yes, you just said you hate the Chiefs.
No, I'm not a Chiefs hater, but I'm mad at them. I think I'm just mad at them. I'm just really mad. not their fault, but I'm sick of it. And I really wanted the Bills to win. But I do think the Eagles are the better team. Now, I thought I feel like a lot of us, maybe all of us felt like the Niners were a better team last year, but I think we all picked the Chiefs. And the thing was, like, the Niners had McCaffrey, and the Chiefs last year couldn't stop the run. And right now, they can't stop the run, and the Eagles have Barkley, but the Chiefs are the Chiefs. Jamey, how are you feeling about the Super Bowl? We have 2 weeks to talk about it, but just to get it out of the way.
I'm not going to bet against Mahomes and Reed at this point. I mean, it's they're chasing history at this point. They didn't have the toughest path in the playoffs. I think the Bills did. They had a little bit of a tougher, I think, championship game than the Eagles did in terms of just who they faced. I don't know. I mean, these are two great teams. It's going to come down to these are both two teams that don't turn the ball over, and that was the difference 3 years ago. Is Jalen Hurts had a big mistake in the game, and the Chiefs capitalized on it. So it's going to probably be a one possession game, and I think the Chiefs win those more times than they don't. So give Andy Reid time to prepare. He's typically really good in this spot.
I couldn't believe it. There were 5 fumbles in that Chiefs-Bills game last night. The Bills recovered all 5 of them.
Is that? Is that including the penalty or no?
Well, that play didn't happen.
No, there were 5 fumbles.
5 fumbles.
Wow.
Bills fumbled 4 times and recovered all 4 of their own fumbles, and then, of course, the 2 interceptions that were dropped by the Chiefs.
Well, didn't the Chiefs have Mahomes have an early fumble before the second one?
But it was there was a offsides on the play, so it didn't count. Yeah, and the Bills recovered that one too.
Someone in the chat saying the Chiefs are bad against the run. They haven't given up a 100-yard rusher all year long. That's true, but they are struggling against the run right now. It's been like 5 weeks. They were the best run defense in football. They've lost that a little bit right now. So it'll be a fun game. All right. Anyway, actually, that's the other thing. I don't know that it'll be that fun of a game. I don't know that these teams are kind of boring to me. It's not. Again, I don't want this to come off.
Here we go.
Yeah, I don't want to come off as a criticism.
They're too good.
They're a little boring. They're
Too
not
good.
quite as fun. All right. Okay. I have an idea for the NFL real quick. So you have some dynasty leagues that if a manager wins 2 years in a row, they just reset the league. They just do a new draft. If the Chiefs do win 3 in a row, can we just reset all the rosters and just put the same player pool and just do some type of draft and
make a rule to where teams can't trade with the Chiefs? Don't let the Chiefs trade up to get guys. Just maybe don't give them as many picks.
All right. What do we got on FFT Dynasty this week?
Jamey is going to be on tomorrow. I hope he remembers. I just told him. We're doing a mock draft, 1 QB startup mock draft. And then on Friday, it's a one-man mailbag. And we'll be answering, particularly if you have any 5-star reviews out there on Spotify, I will go check those out and answer your questions.
There you go. All right, let's get a fantasy winner, fantasy loser from yesterday's games. Jamey, you got a winner?
I mean, I think Heath already gave 2 of them, right? So Jalen Hurts and James Cook would be winners. I'll go Xavier Worthy. Just continues to look like a star in the waiting. And it's really going to be fascinating when Rice comes back. If Kelsey comes back, I think you almost have to view Kelsey as the third option, which is kind of scary. But I'm feeling a lot of like early Tyreek Hill vibes for what we've seen from him the last 3 weeks of the regular season. I know he didn't have the best playoff game against Houston, but still had 6 targets, which was second on the team, 5 catches in that game. And then you see what he's able to do in this game, and he's only going to get better. And so with that speed, with not necessarily having to be the focal point because Rice will be there, I wonder if we're going to end up overdrafting Rice a little bit and not necessarily undervaluing Worthy because he's going to come off, everybody watching him after this game and then whatever he does in the Super Bowl. But he may end up being the better pick because he's going to go later than Rice.
Yeah. Let me see. I'm sorry. Let me pull up our drafts with Xavier Worthy. Worthy with a big game yesterday of 6 for 85 and a touchdown on 7 targets. And he also had 2 carries for 16 yards, which is nice to see. Do you think Xavier Worthy will be a top 60 pick?
Oh, yes.
Top 48 pick?
If he has another big game, I mean, look, first off, Rice suspended or, struggling with the knee injury. It's a big, 2 big caveats there to keep in mind. But assuming Rice ready to go training camp, top 48 will probably be close. I would say I would not take him in the first 4 rounds, but very close to that.
There's too many question marks. Like, is Kelsey there? What games is Rashee Rice going to be healthy and not suspended for? But I could see, like, if Kelsey's gone and Rice is suspended at the beginning of the year, he's definitely going to be in the first 4 rounds.
Yeah, Worthy was round 5 pick in both of our January drafts, half PPR and full PPR. He was 53rd in one draft. He was 60th in the other. Heath, who's a winner for you?
Well, I'm going to say James Cook. We talked about him a little bit, but what I hope comes out of this game is that the nonsense with the 3-headed monster in this backfield goes away. And I know Ty Johnson made some good plays, but 13 carries for 85 yards for James Cook, 8 carries for 23 yards for the other 2 running backs in this game. I hope there's a little bit, because I didn't have James Cook in my top 12 running backs. I don't think when we did our rankings back in January, and I love him as a player. I just hate the way they've been distributing touches, especially down the stretch. So hopefully James Cook earned a few more touches, had 3 catches for 49 yards in the game as well.
I feel like he was a little banged up or something. On their last drive, I feel like Ty Johnson got the carry on the first down. I was like, what the heck is going on here? How could James Cook not be in the game? But
they've done it all year.
Yeah. No, I was also frustrated with that. Right. I don't know if he played 70% of the snaps in any game this year. I'm not sure. So, all right, James Cook, bottom line, he's done so much with somewhat limited work for a top 12 running back. So James Cook in our 2 most recent drafts, he went with the last pick of round 2, 24th overall, and he went with the 6th pick of round 2. Right in front of Jonathan Taylor. Who would you guys rather have, James Cook or Jonathan Taylor?
They're very similar in terms of you're not going to get a lot in the passing game, but I think James Cook has a little bit more to offer given his offense as opposed to Anthony Richardson running the Colts. So I'm going to probably, I think I had Taylor over Cook. I might switch that, especially since, he just showed he can lead the NFL, or tied the NFL lead in rushing touchdowns. So they're very close though.
Yeah, I've got Taylor right now.
All right, and I've got to tell you about BetMGM and our bonus code FANTASY. If you have not signed up for BetMGM yet, use the bonus code FANTASY, and you're going to get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. You download the BetMGM app, and you sign up using the bonus code FANTASY. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure that you use the bonus code FANTASY when you sign up. All right, quick break, fantasy losers, and then all these coaching moves. Really important stuff going on since we last talked. We'll talk about the winners and losers from that. Liam Cohen going to the Jaguars, Pete Carroll to the Raiders, Dallas hiring Brian Schottenheimer as their head coach, Seattle hiring Clint Kubiak as their offensive coordinator. And that's basically it, but still, that's a lot to digest there. We'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today. Welcome back. Okay, let's get to the fantasy losers here. Heath, you want to give me a fantasy loser from the conference championships?
Yeah, I will go with Isiah Pacheco, and I don't know enough about the mesh point, I don't think, to know whether the fumble was his fault or not, but it's just another game of Kareem Hunt being clearly the best running back in the Kansas City backfield, and it's going to be, I still think most likely Pacheco will be fully recovered at the beginning of next year, and he'll be their best running back, but it's going to be hard to have confidence in that going into the year. I don't think you can draft him as a top 15 running back. I'm not sure he's going to be drafted as a top 18 running back. 5
carries for 12 yards, 2 catches for 12 yards for Pacheco. Kareem Hunt had 17 carries for 64 yards and a touchdown, and he had 1 catch for 6 yards. Jamey, loser for you.
I mean, Dalton Kincaid just continues to look like a absolute bust of an NFL pick, and certainly was a bust for fantasy. It's a tough catch at the end. I don't think anybody's going to say easy play, but
right,
your quarterback makes that type of throw under the pressure that he's in, and the ball hits you in the hands. Like, you got to make that play. You have to make that play. So just continues to share snaps with Dawson Knox. Clearly the Bills don't trust him. I don't know how healthy he is with the knee. Since he came back, he's been basically playing fewer snaps than Dawson Knox. I'm sure part of that is, based on scheme with how he does in, run blocking Knox by comparison to Kincaid. But, we got through talking about our top 12 tight ends last week, and I know I had him in the top 12. It's going to be hard to justify that, so hopefully year 3 is better than year 2, but it was a bad year and a bad playoffs.
Yeah, not a good day. I give another loser. Just Brian Robinson Jr., 11 carries for 36 yards, did not have a target. When you have only 2 games, tough to find winners and losers. I guess you could say Devontae Smith. Yeah.
I was going to say, I think you can add Devontae Smith as a loser also. Like Dallas Goedert's back and Devontae Smith's on the fringe again.
Yeah, 4 catches for 45 yards. One of those catches, I wish they had shown a replay of that, like another replay, or if it had been challenged. But one of those catches may have been a bad call. But you finally get 28 pass attempts from Hurts, which is a lot for him. You finally get 246 yards from Hurts. That's a lot for what we've been seeing lately. You only had 15 carries for Saquon Barkley, 118 yards and 3 touchdowns. And Devontae Smith really just does very little. All right, so those are the winners and losers from Conference Championship weekend. And congratulations to the Eagles and the Chiefs. And congratulations to Pete Carroll. Congratulations to Liam Cohen. Congratulations to Brian Schottenheimer. All of them are head coaches. Pete Carroll going to the Raiders. Cohen going to the Jaguars. Schottenheimer being promoted as the offensive coordinator to the head coach for the Dallas Cowboys. And what was the other one? Oh, Clint Kubiak. Congratulations to Clint Kubiak. You are now the offensive coordinator and play caller for the Seattle Seahawks. All right, Jamey, what's the biggest fantasy impact? We also had Aaron Glenn getting hired by the Jets as their head coach, but no offensive coordinator there yet. And we had Declan Doyle is now the offensive coordinator for the Bears, but they have Ben Johnson, so we're not really, he's going to call the plays, so we're not going to spend too much time on that. But when you look at Pete Carroll, Liam Cohen, Brian Schottenheimer, Clint Kubiak going to Seattle, which player really stands out as a big winner here or loser?
I would hope it's everybody in Jacksonville, getting an offensive mind that, did some great things in Tampa Bay and, can hopefully improve the run game. I mean, that was a huge boost for Tampa Bay this year. I don't know how much of that was just Bucky Irving, but, we were talking about just how bad a running back Rachaad White was. And, was it scheme? Was it him? Was it offensive line injuries? The first 2 years of his career. Year 3, everything in Tampa Bay looks better running the ball. Obviously, Baker Mayfield's coming off a big season. So, can Liam Cohen fix the problems in Jacksonville? Can he make Trevor Lawrence into a viable, to an above average NFL quarterback and a viable fantasy quarterback? And that's the biggest thing, so not much is going to change in Dallas outside of maybe a running back change. Obviously, there's a lot of questions in Las Vegas. I think Kubiak, we didn't really get to see anything with the New Orleans offense because of all the injuries there. Derek Carr obviously missed a lot of time. Chris Olave missed the majority of the season. From a passing game perspective, clearly Alvin Kamara had a great year, but did he do anything different because of Kubiak? I don't think that necessarily is because of what was going on there. So the hopeful change will be in Jacksonville with Cohen going.
Heath, what are your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, I think Cohen is the one that we feel the best about. I'm pretty interested to see what Pete Carroll does in Las Vegas, especially if it involves bringing Russell Wilson to Las Vegas. And then who's the Steelers quarterback? Does that mean Justin Fields gets another? I think that whole dynamic will be pretty interesting because I can't imagine that Carroll's going to go into the year with the same thing they had at quarterback last year.
Well, if you are trying to just, have some karma, the last quarterback to win an Arrowhead was Aiden O'Connell.
Yeah.
About that. So it's, talk about tendencies for these coaches and these coordinators here. Pete Carroll has a reputation of being very run heavy. In his last 3 seasons with Seattle, though, he got away from that a little bit. Their pass rate in his last 3 seasons, 2021 to 23, was 20th, 11th, and 5th. And they ranked 6th, 9th, and 18th in points per game. And that was only one Russell Wilson season. He got hurt in that season. So, like Geno Smith in 2022 had that really good year, and then he wasn't so great in 2023, but he wasn't bad. So he got away from that run style. But I think there have been times where Pete Carroll kind of said, we got to run the ball more. So I'm just curious, Heath, when you look at Pete Carroll, you look at Brian Schottenheimer, he's got a pretty run-heavy background. And you look at Seattle, obviously, it seems like they fired Ryan Grubb, their offensive coordinator, in part or mostly maybe because they wanted to run the ball more. They had the 5th highest pass rate in football last year, the Seahawks. You look at Pete Carroll, the Seahawks situation, and Dallas. Are you thinking that these are going to be coaches that want to be more run heavy?
I could see I think, yes, definitely Seattle's going to be more run heavy. Maybe a small change in Dallas, but I don't think it'll be a big one. The Raiders one, let's see who he hires as the offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
I think that's big. And, Schottenheimer was with Carroll for a little bit of time also. In terms of saying Pete Carroll's run heavy, it's the guys that he's hired have been run heavy. He's not calling offensive plays.
No, but it's his philosophy. I think it had been. I mean,
sure. Yeah. And I think but I think the bigger picture is what you're seeing in the NFL. The NFL has become a more run heavy league, from just maybe perception, but in terms of how these teams are operating and how they've gotten to the points that they've gotten to. I mean, you said it when you were talking about the Super Bowl, that these teams are not the most exciting because of, I think, how they're trying to win. They're not trying to go out there and throw the ball 45 plus times. Mahomes has changed, and the NFL has changed in terms of how they're operating. Saquon Barkley has changed the Eagles. So do they want to be more run heavy? Sure. So does that, does Kubiak going there, does it benefit one of the two guys in particular? I don't think anything changes for Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet. I think we're still going to get a split. We're still going to get probably one guy playing more on passing downs like Charbonnet did, one guy playing more on rushing downs, unless he just falls in love with Charbonnet and gives him the opportunity to do both, or a little bit more from a carry perspective. So I don't know what we'll see from Seattle or from Las Vegas. Interesting with the Russell Wilson tie-in. So was it him? Was it Carroll who wanted to move on from Russell Wilson, or was it John Schneider, the GM? And that will be somewhat telling if they make a run at Russell Wilson.
I did see someone, I don't remember who it was, that said that there was some sort of rift between the two of them, but they have mended fences. So I don't know.
By the way, there's a little overlap here in the coaching news. This Brian Schottenheimer was the offensive coordinator for Pete Carroll for 3 seasons, and Seattle was really good offensively. They were 9th in scoring, 8th in scoring, and 6th in scoring. In those 3 seasons, they were 32nd in pass rate, 27th in pass rate, and then 14th in pass rate. So Schottenheimer is an interesting hire, right? It seemed clear. It seemed like in the days before he was hired or promoted that he had become the favorite. But I think a lot of people thought maybe they'd be a splashier hire. And quite frankly, his resume as a play caller, it's not great. He was, according to ESPN, play caller for 12 seasons out of 15 as an OC, maybe 14 as an OC. Play caller for 12 seasons, and only 4 times did his teams rank top 10 in points per game. Is this bad for the Cowboys offense?
Is he going to call plays?
That's a good question. He didn't call plays last year. I would think so, but it's a good question. I don't know.
It's so hard because the personnel is going to be most likely the same. So what are they doing at their second receiver spot? What are they doing in their backfield? The number 1 receiver and tight end are locked in. Quarterback is locked in. They need to still work on the offensive line. There's a lot of questions. So it's a very uninspiring hire. Right. Like you said, I think everybody looks at Dallas and expects them to go get a big name or a guy that has a resume, and he doesn't have. Well, he has a name. Clearly, his dad was one of the greatest coaches ever. I don't know, one of the greatest coaches. Well, a great coach. And
7th winningest coach, I think, of all time.
Yeah, he's a great coach. I don't want to sell Marty Schottenheimer short. Does he make you feel better if you're a Cowboys fan? And I'm sure the answer is most likely no. So what do they do in the draft? I think if they this feels like a team that's going to do something a little crazy in the draft, like drafting a running back in the first round.
Yep.
And so, Genty to the Cowboys seems like a potential meeting spot, a landing spot. And does that help things dramatically? Is he the answer to solve their offensive woes? Getting Dak back is huge, but they couldn't run the ball the majority of the season.
Well, I think there's a perception that their offense got a little stale, right? And so hiring from within,
right?
I don't know. It's going to fire up managers.
But did their offense get stale, or did everybody just get hurt?
Right.
I think they were struggling before the Dak injury.
Well, it was, they lose Tyron Smith. Offensive line wasn't the same. Running game certainly wasn't the same early in
Is
the
that
season.
getting better though? I mean, yeah.
No. I'm not disagreeing with you, but to go from where they were in 2023 to then quarterback missing the majority of the season, no run game till the end of the season, CeeDee Lamb with the contract situation earlier in the year, like there was a lot of disjointed scenarios for, Jake Ferguson missed a big chunk of the season. Like there was a lot of just guys missing that were big reasons why they were so good the year before. I don't think it's on McCarthy.
I don't know. It might be. I mean, when you hear Dan like breaking down the film, talking about the Cowboys offense and the lack of creativity, I thought that was kind of an interesting angle there.
But then how did they go from having an MVP candidate and quarterback the year before
Yeah.
to him missing, and then all of a sudden they can't do anything? I don't disagree. Like we've said this for years about McCarthy and Green Bay. Like there was a lack of, a lot of it was Rodgers, as we're finding out. He likes his guys to run certain routes. He doesn't like to have pre-snap motion. He wants to see what the defense is doing and, let the play clock run down to 1. So a lot of that was probably the quarterback's influence. But I don't know if all you heard was they thought McCarthy was coming back.
And this was, it seems, I saw a couple of reports, a guy that Dak Prescott wanted to be the head coach. He was in Schottenheimer's corner. So there is that, and there's a good rapport there. I don't know that that's necessarily the best reason. If that was the reason, I don't know that's the best reason to make the hire. You got to sometimes shake things up. I hope it works out. But, for Dak Prescott, he's not in anyone's top 12, right, Jamey?
No.
And that's kind of interesting because he's obviously had a horrible, he had a bad season, but he's been a very consistent quarterback as a fantasy starter. And I want to say 4 of his last 6 seasons, he's averaged 24 or more points per game and 6 point per passing touchdown leagues. That's like a wow number. So how are we feeling about Dak Prescott, Heath?
High-end QB2 with top 8 upside. I don't think, like to your point, I don't think anybody's moving Dak Prescott into their top 12 because they decided to hire Brian Schottenheimer. But I think we're just going to have to see if he and CeeDee Lamb can stay healthy and what kind of help they get on this offense.
He will be a great option to pair with like an Anthony Richardson, or try to think some of the guys that were ranked like 10 through 12 in the consensus. Brock Purdy potentially.
Purdy and right.
Kyler.
Bo Nix, Caleb Williams.
Yep. So any of these guys that have some question marks, it'd be very surprising if he's less than, let's say, an 18, 19 point per game type of guy. He typically is going to be a 21, 22 type point per game type of guy.
Okay, so my last question about all the coaching news is anybody concerned about the Bucs taking a big step back? They now lost their offensive coordinator 2 years in a row. It certainly did not matter last year, but anybody concerned about that?
I think it adds a level of uncertainty that wouldn't have been there if the change hadn't happened, but I'm not concerned enough to where I'm going to significantly downgrade any parts of their offense.
Yep.
All right, cool. Let's go. I forgot to do one question for each eliminated team. So let's do that. I got a question for the Commanders and a question for the Buffalo Bills. And my question for the Commanders is really just not a specific, is he a top 12, whatever, but how do you feel about Terry McLaurin? 117 targets in 17 games, 82 catches, just under 1,100 yards. None of that is too great. 13 touchdowns for a guy who had 4 to 5 touchdowns in 4 straight seasons. He had 13 this year. And then he had 3 more in the playoffs. He went nuts in the playoffs. So I'll give you the first word, Jamey. How do you feel about Terry McLaurin going into 2025? And before I finish my rambling here, he went with the 9th pick of round 3 and the 7th pick of round 3 in our most recent drafts.
I think that's a good spot for him. He'll be in that high-end wide receiver 2 range. Might be drafted as a top 12 guy. They're going to add somebody, whether it's another receiver, or maybe it's a change at tight end if they don't feel like Ben Sinnott is the next guy up, or they bring back Zach Ertz, which who knows? He was so good for them this season and certainly was a monster in the playoffs. But I would expect him to make a run at a receiver or draft another receiver. This is a landing spot now for teams. You have a culture change with the owner that everybody, I think, wants to be a part of. You have a quarterback that's going to be in this position more times than not, based on what he did as a rookie. So I would imagine you're going to hear T. Higgins to Washington as a rumor, Chris Godwin to Washington as a rumor. whatever the next free agent is. It could be the Marquise Browns of the world. But there's going to be somebody else added. But I think when you look at McLaurin, this is what we've said about these guys. Stephon Diggs, when he got a team change. Okay, now you get to see what he can do as a fantasy receiver. DJ Moore, good receiver, never put up fantasy production. Gets in a situation where he can put up good fantasy production. That happened to Terry McLaurin. He got a quarterback that can feature him to the level that we like. No, but pretty close. And the numbers sort of bear that out a little bit. That he's not necessarily the type of guy you want to build your receiving core around, but he's also a pretty good option if you go running back, tight end, receiver. Maybe he's your second receiver. To me is ideal. I gladly take him round 3.
I do think like the touchdowns point you make, Adam, you look at Terry McLaurin's 17 game pace for his career, 81 catches, 1,118 yards on 127 targets.
Mm-hmm.
This season, he had 82 catches, 1,096 yards on 117 targets. Like the entire difference between Terry McLaurin's career and the 2024 season was the touchdowns.
And it was the end zone targets specifically. He had the 7th most end zone targets in the NFL, and he had the most touchdown catches on his end zone targets of anyone in football.
So, like, going into the season when I'm doing my projections, I won't normally project a wide receiver for higher than a 6% touchdown rate. Maybe if it's somebody like Mike Evans who scores 10 touchdowns every year, you go up to a 7% touchdown rate, and that's just the touchdowns divided by targets. Coming into this year, Terry McLaurin was right around, I think, 3.5% touchdown rate for his career. And this season, he scored on 11% of his targets. So I think there's probably significant touchdown regression coming. You just hope that maybe there's a lot of times we see that second-year quarterbacks throw the ball a little bit more than they did as rookies. Maybe the target volume goes up a little bit. But yeah, I think number 2 wide receiver is the best way to view him.
And one of the things, one of my theories about McLaurin was that he had such bad deep ball accuracy in his career that Daniels was such a good deep ball thrower that McLaurin would benefit from that. Well, they were bad again in deep ball accuracy. If you look at 20 or more air yards, passes of 20 or more air yards, but he did have 405 yards on pass attempts of 20 or more air yards, which was by far the most, not by far, but the most of his career. So the accuracy wasn't necessarily better, but the production was better. And it wasn't because of more pass attempts, just I think probably hit him deeper downfield. There was more yak. But I think, sorry.
His highest ADOT since his rookie year, 13.4. It was 11.5 the year before that. So like that probably lent itself to more big plays too.
It's also, we talked about this a lot with Kyler Murray, how he usually focuses on one guy in Cliff Kingsbury's offense.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. That's the thing. Like, he only had 117 targets. And okay, this is right. So I don't think
Maybe
that
not focus on one guy is the right way to phrase it. Maybe one guy stands out.
Yeah, well, for sure, right? But so McLaurin, if you just look at the numbers, it's a pretty normal year. I mean, Heath just laid it out. But even if you want to get into the deeper metrics, the target share, the target per out run rate, the yak, the yards per catch, the yards per it was nothing outlandish. It was really just the touchdowns.
To Jamey's point about focusing on one guy, though, yes, he only had 117 targets. No other wide receiver had more than 64.
No, but Ertz, what did Ertz have?
Ertz had 91.
Yeah. They didn't throw a lot. I think they averaged about 28.5 pass attempts per game, something like that. But great year for McLaurin, and obviously a great rapport with Jaden Daniels. And then if you throw his postseason numbers in there, it's even better. But might surprise people with this great year for McLaurin. He was only 16th per game in non-PPR, 12th per game in full PPR. All right, let's take a break. I'm going to ask you a Bills question when we come back after this on FFT.
The clock never stops. Relive the greatest moments with uninterrupted highlights and more.
It's Gareth Bale. Ronaldo! Wonderful goal.
On the UEFA Champions League channel. Streaming free.
All right, so let's finish off with this question about the Bills. It's going to sound crazy. I think the answer is probably no. But is there a case to be made to draft Keon Coleman ahead of Khalil Shakir in 2025?
Upside.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's not. Maybe you can Azer stat Khalil Shakir's numbers, or I'm forgetting something. Like, I know he had some good stretches, but he was wide receiver 37 per game on the season. I think you can make a case to draft a lot of players over that guy.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's like Shakir had such a good year. Was this the best we're going to see of Khalil Shakir? What, 37th per game?
The only thing would be is if something happens to him like what happened to McLaurin, where it was, I think, like 12 games in a row where he had at least 6 targets or more, if I'm not mistaken, going into the playoffs. Might have been 9. I don't know. It's in that range, right around 10. And like 70% of those were 60+ yards. He only scored 2 touchdowns during that stretch. So that's the problem for him, is that he's just not going to be a significant touchdown scorer. Maybe 6. He has one of those type of seasons that bumps him from wide receiver, would you say 36, 37, to wide receiver 26, 28, in that range. I think it just the floor is pretty safe for him. The ceiling is just not that high. Whereas Keon Coleman, if things click for him, he can be the alpha for Josh Allen. But I think that's what's missing in this offense. I don't know if Keon Coleman's that guy. And so, they tried with Amari Cooper, who just looks completely washed up. Dalton Kincaid clearly did not take the step forward that a lot of us were hoping for. And so that's the biggest hole in this offense right now, because that's what Josh Allen's missing is a consistent go-to guy that can, help him not necessarily have to be Superman on every play. Will they go out and get that guy? Can they find that guy? Is it a trade? Is it do they get in the T. Higgins mix, for example? I don't know. So, but if they don't, and they don't bring back anybody significant, and it's the same group, and you're relying on Mac Hollins to make those plays, like Keon Coleman should definitely be the best receiver on this team. Will he? That's the question.
Yeah. Did he show enough? Did he do enough? He didn't really have that great of a season, but he was good. Yeah. Such a stupid metric sometimes, but 89 wide receivers with 50 or more targets. He was 16th in explosive play rate. That's Keon Coleman. But guess who was ahead of him? One spot ahead of
Mac Hollins.
Kavonte Turpin.
Oh,
right behind him, Calvin Austin. So when you just don't get that many targets, you can show up on these lists really high. So yeah,
it was a little interesting because you go back to the Dolphins game where he had the wrist injury. He was starting to play better then.
Yeah, he was.
He really was starting to look like, okay, this could be a guy that Josh Allen will lean on. And then he never did anything coming back from the wrist injury.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's all I got for today. I could read some emails. Should we read some emails?
Sure.
All right, we got time. Here's one from Case. It's a dynasty grade the trade. I gave away 1.1 Ricky Pearsall and Tajay Spears for 1.3 Isiah Pacheco and Brandon Ayuk. So it gives up 1 point. I don't know. 1.1 moves down to 1.3, gives up Pearsall and Spears, gets Pacheco and Ayuk.
Is it super flex, I wonder?
Yeah, I'm not sure. So give me a grade for both scenarios.
C- if it's 1 QB, C+ if it's super flex.
I don't like to move down for a player coming off an ACL tear and a broken leg.
Yeah.
To another player coming off a broken leg. Like, you're not getting like slam dunk value here for basically 2 first-round picks, because Pearsall was either a borderline first-round pick or a first-round pick last year in a 1 QB league. And so it feels like you're giving up too much young talent, young potential, because you want to control the draft. You had that control. Now you're at 2 other people's mercy.
Like if everything goes right for Ashton Genty and he like gets a good situation with a first-round draft capital, he's probably going to be a top 10 player for me in a 1 QB dynasty league, like a first-round pick in a startup.
I wonder if the kid from Ohio State's better.
Oh, yeah. And then there's going to be really interesting. Somebody actually wrote an email about Travis Hunter and what we're going to do about him. I guess he's just going to be wide receiver eligible, but he may not even play. We don't know what position he's going to play. So
I'm going to push really hard in our YOLO Dynasty League, which is IDP, that he gets fantasy points for everything that he does. I think he, like, if you're playing both sides, if he's legitimately going to play both sides of the football, that is one of the most valuable players in football. And he should be one of the most valuable players in fantasy.
Is he not just Shohei Ohtani? Because we didn't do that with Shohei Ohtani.
Well,
I remember that because I was hosting the podcast during those Otani days.
Yeah, I remember it too. And I think I was making the argument that he should be the most valuable player in fantasy.
Yeah, well, I think
he's the most valuable player in baseball.
It's like unfair, but
it's too good. Too good.
No,
It's boring.
There's only one guy doing that. It just seems like it's just not fair. It's not like everyone. I guess if you did an auction, it'd be one thing.
But there's only one guy doing that.
I see your point. I wouldn't do that. What we did with Otani was you had to start him every week in a weekly league. You had to make him either a pitcher or a hitter, and
also,
you would
like
his points for both.
Defensive backs often average, especially corners, might average 4 or 5 fantasy points a game. Like if he's not a full-time corner, he might have 2 tackles a lot of games.
He might. Yeah, he's so good. Oh, that's why I want the Giants to draft. By the way,
Stop.
He's the best player by far.
And who's your quarterback next year?
I don't care. Like get the best player. Get the best player.
Okay.
All right. Question from Nick. He just wants to know in general what you guys think about the Aaron Glenn hire for the Jets.
I think the biggest thing is, they need a culture change. Someone's going to go in there and be the dominant voice and not let the owner interfere. Hopefully he has that kind of cachet right away. Former player there clearly was, on what just was a unfortunate situation because that defense was so good before they started losing guys. And I don't think you can look at him and say, okay, what happened in the playoffs is totally his fault as the coach that gave up, they gave 50 plus points to Washington in the division round. So
yeah, I remember a lot.
If they get the quarterback situation right, it's going to be a great hire. If they don't, it's going to be an awful hire.
They gave 45 points.
45.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. I feel like I have another. I have some fantasy cops questions. How about this one from Joe? I am a rebuilding team for the first time in a 12-team PPR Superflex tight end premium league. I was offered pick 203 for Sutton and Dobbins. I have 102, 107, 110, 202, and 204. So that would give him 3 picks in the first 4 of the second round, plus 3 first-round picks. But he'd be giving up Sutton and Dobbins for pick 203. What do you think?
I would like another second.
Yeah, need more.
I think you should get a 2026 second included. And I will say, like, Superflex and tight end premium means 203 is you should probably think of that almost like a first round pick in a 1 quarterback league that's not tight end premium, because there's probably 3 tight ends that go in the first round based on my very, very early research. But still, I'd like one more. Give me a 2026 second. We're really close.
The only thing that I'll say is that you may get a situation where Dobbins leaves the Chargers and goes to a worse situation. So if you want to try and make this trade happen, do it now.
That is it. Now we are done for today's show. Going to definitely do some fantasy cops if I get a chance. If they're good and if they're worthy of the show, we'll throw some fantasy cops in later this week. Keep sending your questions, fantasyfootball@cbsi.com, or leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast with your question and comment. Tell people why you love the show. And yeah, thanks a lot for watching and listening, everybody. Go Cheagles. That's where I'm at right now. Just trying to figure it out. Just trying to figure it out.
You started the podcast hating the Chiefs.
The hate. I still hate the Eagles. Doesn't mean I don't hate the Eagles. Yeah, make no mistake. All right.
Why do you have to root for anything? Just watch the game.
That's so boring. I want to have something.
I mean, you want to see Saquon get a ring. Come on. Just be happy for Saquon. Root for Saquon.
I am happy for him.
Or you could be happy for Spags. Spags gave you a lot of joy.
You were happy when Kadarius Toney got a ring.
Can I just read you the first 3 little paragraphs from the AP recap of Washington, Philadelphia? Saquon Barkley consulted with his family before the star running back decided, yes, it was time to leave his only professional home with the Giants and sign with the Eagles. His youngest daughter, Jada, had one question for Dad as he told her the family was headed to Philadelphia. Does this mean Dad will win now?
That's really, I'm really happy for him. Who brought you more joy? Saquon or Spags?
Spagnola, come on.
Yeah. Let's cheer for the Chiefs.
Let's go, Chiefs. Thank you, Heath. All right, we're out of here. We'll talk to you on Wednesday on Fantasy Football Today.